You get a special joining by Dustin Schutte. We had some big football signings or commitments over the weekend, Dustin. Big for Indiana. We've been talking about when are some of these bigger commitments going to start landing from their success. I'd say this is start of that. Trevell Mullen, of course, had the brother here, but let's talk about the linebacker first. This guy's from Ohio, and that's a good signing right there.
Yeah, because you look at, Ohio is one of those states that, you look at places like Florida, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, California, some of these big names with a lot of recruits. And so Ohio a lot of times gets passed over, but it's a great recruiting ground. If you follow Letterman Rowe and Jeremy Birmingham, they recently saw this kid, and he's a guy who's, his stock is rising right now. And, I always go back to, you look at these kids in the top 50 from Ohio. Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State used to make a killing. He won Big Ten titles with these kind of players. So he may not be the highest ranked guy, but he's one of those diamonds in the rough I think that you're going to find. Those are the kind of players you want, that grit. You want those guys who get passed over, those guys who don't get offers from Ohio State and some of those bigger schools that they're looking to play for. So I really like this pickup. I think he's a solid linebacker. Again, Ohio is a state that has got a ton of recruiting talent. It just gets passed over because a lot of times you're looking at places like Florida, Georgia, California, Texas, those spots. But this Isaiah Jones kid, there's been a lot of talk about him. I think he's in the lower 3-star end of the pool, but he's going to bring a lot to the table, I think.
You know what he reminds me of? A guy named Michael McFadden, who just all he did was get turned into an All-American here and is already now this year on the Walter Camp preseason All-American watch list. He came here in a similar situation. They come here with a chip on their shoulder, I think.
Yeah.
Those guys from, say, Ohio or Texas or Florida that like, oh, you don't think I'm that good? Okay, well, let me show you. And that is what I think you get out of those guys like that. And, man, what better would you want than somebody with a chip on their shoulder than feeling like it should be given to me? So, yeah, I love those guys, man. And that's why it creates more of a blue-collar atmosphere. It's always you got to work harder atmosphere. And those kids, that's the Tom Allen type, man. That just fits right in with what Tom Allen has built at Indiana.
Yeah, and we talk about this on this show quite a bit, that Indiana needs to take that bump up in recruiting, right? They need to get more of the 4-star and maybe get some 5-star guys, or at least one 5-star guy every few years. But you have to have these kind of guys as your foundation. You look at a place like Iowa. Kirk Ferentz has made his whole career out of turning 2- and 3-star guys into NFL prospects. And we've talked about even the development at places like Indiana. We're starting to see these are guys who aren't highly recruited, but they're getting looks at the NFL. And if they're not drafted, at least they're going to be signing free agent contracts as an undrafted free agent. So I think that this is the kind of potential you have. I think Tom Allen is confident, not just in himself and in the program, but you look at the staff hires. We talked about Charlton Warren, a guy who worked at places like Georgia and Florida. He's got that SEC experience. They have a great staff to be able to develop that talent. And as you mentioned, if you come in with a guy who's got a chip on his shoulder, hey, I didn't get offered by Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan. I'm going to go into Indiana, and I'm going to make those schools regret not recruiting me. And so I think having that mindset and having that thought that, I can go to Indiana, I can do big things, I can get to the NFL, or at least I can be an all Big Ten player and all American. As you mentioned, Michael McFadden, a great example. You look at Indiana's roster, there aren't a ton of, big time 4-star and 5-star guys on the roster. It's a bunch of 3-star guys. And they were able to go 6-1 last year in the regular season, go toe to toe with Ohio
without their
State.
number one quarterback.
Without their number one quarterback. And, those are the kind of guys that this Indiana is never going to be a school that competes with Ohio State and Michigan from a recruiting standpoint. You can improve, but you're not going to be at that level in the top 2 or 3 probably ever. So to get guys like this, and Isaiah Jones, a linebacker with a chip on his shoulder, out of a good state of Ohio that plays really good high school football, I think that's a big win.
Yeah, because Michigan right now still gets those recruits.
Yes.
As bad as they've been, as much pressure as there is on Jim Harbaugh, as much talk as there is, they're still getting those recruits. Not all of them and not as many as they were getting but they're still getting them. And that matters because it still gives them a shot. But it also takes away from a school like Indiana who could land a kid like that to where they're like, not necessarily that that's a kid that would have gone here, but I'm just, as long as there's a school in your division that is still getting those recruits, and it is. And you've also got Penn State, and you've got Michigan State. So Indiana has got a tough road to hoe in the Big Ten East because you're competing against some of the most iconic programs in college football. And that's not going to change. Like you said, Penn State is never not going to be Penn State. Ohio State is never not going to be Ohio State. Michigan's just not going to not be Michigan. Now, Michigan State is one of those, they could work their way out and kind of are working on that right now. They're working themselves out of that top four. Indiana has worked their way into the top four right now. Can they stay there? And that's the battle. Can you stay, not only stay there, but elevate yourself? Just like I said, Ohio State, it's just tough to move. They're a semi-pro team. I mean, however you want to call it, they just are. I mentioned earlier, Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. They're at a different level. They just are. Their programs are. Their facilities are. Everything is just at a different level, and that is not changing anytime soon.
No, and I think what Indiana should probably look at is a school like, or a program like a Wisconsin or like an Iowa, because again, you look at their recruiting and it's not like, yeah, they might have a top 15 or 20 class every now and then, but usually they're recruiting in the 30s and the 40s. They get a lot of 3- and 4-star guys. You want to have that development factor because that's where you're going to be able to make up some of the ground on some of these programs. I mean, you go back, look at Iowa 2 seasons ago, 2019, they go 10-3. They had a rough start in 2020, and then they go 6-2. Why can't Indiana be like that? Why can't Indiana get some of these 3-star guys and get some of those 4 and maybe a 5-star guy who help them to compete with teams like Ohio State at the top of the Big Ten, the teams like Penn State? I mean, I think Indiana's in a really good situation right now. And we've already said, we're going to talk about another guy here in Trevell Mullen, who's a big-time recruit for them, a 4-star guy. And it makes me wonder too, Jim, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Trevell Mullen is an NFL caliber guy. Does he stick around to play, 1 season with his brother? I mean, that's another factor there. You don't know that that's going to be the case. He's got to do what's in his best interest. We have no idea how the 2021 season is going to play out, but it's something to factor in there. So just the fact that you are on these radars, you get Dason McCullough, you're able to get Donovan McCulley, a big-time in-state recruit. I mean, we're seeing this. You've talked about it too, where you can just see the chart. It started out as 2- and 3-star guys, and now you're starting to see that trickle down and elevate to get 3- and 4-star guys, and eventually they'll get a 5-star guy. I really believe that. But there's no reason that when you look at a school like an Iowa or Wisconsin, that Indiana can't fit that mold, that they can't consistently be in bowl games, they can't consistently be recruiting in the 30s and the 40s, and then they can't be competing for a Big Ten title or an East Division title once every 4 to 5 years. And I know you look at the history, losing this program in college football history, and it indicates that may not be the case, but Tom Allen's done a magical job in just 4 years. And if you continue to get this kind of talent mixed with those players, those 3-star guys, the Isaiah Joneses, the Micah McFadden's of the world who come in with a chip on their shoulder, who want to work hard, who want to prove everybody else wrong, it's a great recipe for success. And this is where, again, we talk about the LEO culture is perfect at Indiana. And it's starting to translate not only on the field, but on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, Mullen, Trevell Mullen's brother, Trayvon, I didn't know. I thought that he may end up here just because of the success that Taiwan had. He became an All-American. What more could you ask for? I didn't know if he was going to want to. Sometimes they want to make their own path, but it is not about that here. You can be your own person here, or at Indiana. I shouldn't say here, at Indiana. But it is because he said it felt like family, and that's the whole deal. What they're making it is a team. And if you've ever played on a team, that is ultimately the ultimate importance. If you're not together, you're apart. And again, I cannot overstate getting 125 guys to be on the same page is crazy, because you've got 125 personalities, 125 people that have goals. Those goals cannot all be in the same direction, but they've gotten it to become that, at least for the team. And that is amazing. That's part of the amazing thing that we've seen Tom Allen do, though. But I just don't think that can be overstated. Man, you're talking about 125 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids that you're getting to come together and play for each other. It's remarkable. And but they still need, that has been great to see, but now everybody wants to see that next level. But it takes time. I mean, let's stop and look at, this has not been a quick rise here. I mean, or a short, Tom Allen's been, this is what, his 4th year as head coach? Or going into his 4th season as head coach, I think?
Going
or
into
fifth,
his fifth.
fifth. So, and never been a head coach. So he started from scratch, where virtually everyone, including myself, doubted that he could do that. There was no way he was going to be able. And so not only did he start from scratch, he was starting at scratch with everybody doubting him. And man, to be there where he is, it's remarkable. I can't say it enough how remarkable of a job that he's done and doing.